Chapter 163. This year's All-Star Rookie Challenge was different from previous years. In previous years, it was always the first-year players against the second-year players. This was the tradition of the NBA. But to be honest, it was always so unintentional and boring. The most important thing was that sometimes, the talents of the first-year players and the second-year players were different. Sometimes, it wasn't very intense, but it was very interesting to watch. Ever since Adam Xueqi became the president of the NBA, he had a lot of plans for the restructuring of the NBA. The Rookie Challenge was the first change he made. The original Rookie Challenge was between the first-year players and the second-year players. This year, he changed it to the U.S. team against the international team. Among the first-year and second-year players in the NBA, the U.S. national players would be selected to face the international players. This way, the game would have more confrontations. It would also show the future strength of the U.S. Basketball Conference and the International Basketball Conference. Sure enough, after his restructuring, the ticket sales for this year's Rookie Challenge were much better than before. The head coach of the international team this year was the assistant coach of the Eastern Conference's best team, the Hawks, Kenny Atkinson. The head coach of the U.S. team was the assistant coach of the Warriors, King Terry. It had to be admitted that the Warriors were very ambitious recently. This could be seen from the coaching staff of the Xing duo. King Terry had been the head coach of the Phoenix Suns in the past, and his results were not bad. He had even made it to the Western Finals. But now, he was willing to be an assistant coach in the Warriors. It was clear that the Warriors were very attractive. While the players were warming up, the big screen in the stadium introduced the members of the two teams. On the U.S. team, there were the 76ers' best rookie last year, Michael Carter-Williams, and Michael Carter-Williams. When these three names were put together, it was really intimidating. There was the Magic's current outside core Audiobook, the Jazz's main power forward, Trey Burke, Pop from the Pistons, Zach LaVine from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Mohammed, who was also from the Timberwolves, Nolan Noel, the 76ers' top draft pick last year, who was only selected as the sixth pick, Mason Plumlee, the second of the three Plumlee brothers from the Brooklyn Nets, Cody Zeller, one of the three Zeller brothers from the Charlotte Bobcats. No, they had changed their name to the Charlotte Hornets this year. There was also the Magic's power forward Peyton, whose hair was cooler than his skills. On the international team, there was this year's top draft pick, Andrew Wiggins from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who was traded for Love by the Cavaliers. He was a Canadian. There was also Steven Adams from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Bucks' Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, also known as Alphabet Bro. This person was very popular in the NBA recently. He used a three-step layup from outside the three-point line and occupied a lot of the screen. There were also the players here, Bojan Bogdanovic of the Nets, Gorgui Dieng of the Timberwolves, the Jazz's third potential power forward, Dante Exum, the Bulls' riffraff Nikola Mirotic, the Jazz's inside player, Rudy Gobert, the Atlanta Hawks' Blondie Schroeder, and Kelly Olynyk, the Boston Celtics player who had met Zhang Hai once. To be exact, he had a ball game with Zhang Hai, the Boston Celtics player, Kelly Olynyk. Looking at these people doing warm-up shots on the court, Zhang Hai sat on the sidelines and kept taking photos of the people on the court with his mobile phone. For him, the game had not yet started. Instead of watching here, it was better to take some photos and post them to his circle of friends. That way, he would have a lot of shares. Just as Zhang Hai was feeling happy, a face suddenly appeared in his camera. "It's you." Looking at this face, Zhang Hai was also shocked. He resisted the urge to punch him and took a closer look at the owner of this face. Then he frowned because he also knew this guy. Just the day before yesterday, he had some conflicts with the bastard, Justin Bieber. Looking at Zhang Hai in front of him, Justin Bieber said with an unhappy face, "I also want to say how it's you." Originally, he was a die-hard basketball fan. A few years ago, when his reputation was still good, he was invited to the All-Star game. In fact, if it wasn't for his bad reputation, the NBA would have been very willing to promote with him. After all, it was good publicity. But now, the NBA didn't want to have anything to do with him. The All-Star game wouldn't invite him again, but he still liked basketball. Even if he had to pay for it, he would still come to watch the game. Especially since this guy was a patriotic guy. With a Canadian like Andrew Wiggins here, it wasn't a big deal for him to be here to support him. Looking at Bieber's big face, Zhang Hai gave him the middle finger and then continued to play with his mobile phone. He didn't want to have anything to do with this guy. This guy was really a bad person. You're also here to watch the game? Can you understand it? However, just because Zhang Hai ignored him didn't mean that he ignored Zhang Hai. Looking at Zhang Hai sitting there, he also moved to Zhang Hai's side and said to Zhang Hai with a proud face, "I know it better than you." Zhang Hai looked at this guy and said with an unhappy face, "Know it better than me? Hey, you're really good at bragging. Do Asians also play basketball? Don't you only produce centers? Don't tell me that with your height, you're also a center." Looking at Zhang Hai, Justin Bieber said with a happy face. Indeed, in the past few years, Xueqi had cultivated the most players into the NBA in Asia. However, there was only one person who directly played, and that was Yao Ming. Even if Emperor Yi had some outstanding performances in the NBA, it was only occasionally. If his defense improved a little, he could also be a rotation player. After all, his explosive scoring power was still good. However, the problem was that he was not a core player and his defense was below average. In the end, it was difficult for him to return to China after the end of his rookie season. In addition to these two, the other Asian players, which could also be said to be domestic players, couldn't stand firm in the NBA. Although Sun Yu and Coach Ba got 2 championship rings in the end, it was basically a victory for them. For Europeans and Americans, the Asians' basketball skills were not good. It seemed that this was a very common thing. If you're not convinced, let's play a game. Hearing Justin Bieber's words, Zhang Hai also put down the phone in his hand. Although he admitted that Xueqi's team might not be able to beat the American team, he was a Canadian. What was there to be cocky about? Besides, even if Xueqi's team couldn't beat the Americans, it didn't mean that Zhang Hai couldn't beat them. He was so strong that even he felt scared. Okay. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Justin Bieber also looked at him. That day at the nightclub, he was in a bad mood. Why did he have to apologize to him when he was beaten? Now that he had a chance to teach Zhang Hai a lesson, he wouldn't give up. You set a time. Hearing that he agreed, Zhang Hai didn't beat around the bush and said directly. Seeing that Zhang Hai agreed, Justin Bieber's face also brimmed with a smile. Then let's play now. Now, let's go out and play? Hearing his words, Zhang Hai froze for a moment. Don't watch the game? Why go out? We'll play here. Seeing Zhang Hai's surprised expression, Justin Bieber smiled. Then, regardless of whether Zhang Hai was willing or not, he stood up from his seat and went straight to the left side of the court. Hey, Andrew, you guys take a break first. I want to borrow your court. I'm going to have a bullfight with a guy. Regardless of Zhang Hai's stunned gaze, Justin Bieber walked straight to Andrew Wiggins and said proudly. As the pride of Canadians, Andrew Wiggins was naturally very familiar with Justin Bieber. Although he did a lot of disgusting things and was boycotted in the United States and Canada, he was still a national treasure, so Andrew Wiggins had a good relationship with him. This I have to ask the coach. Hearing Justin Bieber's words, Andrew smiled slightly awkwardly. Although he was this year's top scorer, he was still just a rookie. At this time, he naturally had to ask the coach's opinion. Fortunately, their coach was the assistant coach of the Hawks. Everyone knew that the head coach of the Hawks, Hornacek, was under Popovich, so the character of their team's coaching staff was not much different from that of the Spurs. Basically, they were the kind of people who valued the regular season and the playoffs more than life and death. But when it came to the All-Star game, which many people paid attention to, they almost didn't care. The supercore of the Spurs, the most powerful forward in the history of the NBA, Tim Duncan, had only shared the All-Star MVP award with O'Neal in 1900. After that, for many years, he was just a bystander. Therefore, when the coach found out that Justin Bieber was going to play, he shrugged his shoulders to show that he didn't care. Since he didn't care, the other players were also happy to take a break. Seeing that half of the court had been cleared, Andrew Wiggins smiled and stuffed the basketball into Justin Bieber's arms. He winked at him and said, "Then I'll leave it to you." Holding the basketball, Justin Bieber turned his head and looked at Zhang Hai, who was still in a daze, and shouted, "Hey, come on up." Now, Zhang Hai was really in a daze. He really wanted to teach this guy a lesson on the basketball court, but he really didn't think that it would be on the NBA All-Star game. For a moment, he was a little numb. Looking at Justin Bieber, who was constantly waving his arms on the court, Moses Adams leaned over to Zhang Hai and whispered to Zhang Hai, "Hey, boss, are you reliable? If I said that I don't know, How would you feel? Hearing Moses Adams' words, Zhang Hai whispered back. Then what do we do now? Chapter 164. What did it mean to ride a tiger and have no way to back down? What did it mean to have no choice but to release the arrow when it was knocked? What did it mean to not seek death and not die? Of course, the last sentence was for Justin Bieber. However, Zhang Hai did feel that it was a little troublesome now. This was a personal grudge, a duel in front of tens of thousands of people. This was something that made one feel overwhelmed. Zhang Hai was in a dilemma now. If he said that he couldn't go up, would he still want his face? However, if he said that, he really felt a little guilty and afraid. He didn't know what to do. Hey, come up. You're not afraid, are you? Seeing Zhang Hai's hesitation, Justin Bieber kept waving his arms and provoking Zhang Hai to come up. He even deliberately dribbled the ball on the court and played some tricks. The audience on the sidelines didn't know what was going on at this time. They only saw Justin Bieber constantly making some provocative moves on the court, as if he was asking someone to play basketball. Following the principle of watching a show and not being afraid of making it big, they also booed Bieber. Listening to these boos, Zhang Hai felt that his legs were getting weaker and weaker. This was the first time in Zhang Hai's life that he was so timid. Following the principle that he would rather die standing than live sitting down, Zhang Hai gritted his teeth, slapped his leg hard, and said in a low voice, F***ck, so be it. Then he stood up with his legs and walked onto the court. Seeing Zhang Hai stand up, Justin Bieber also clapped happily. The cameras on the sidelines also wanted to know who Bieber's opponent was. They also gave Zhang Hai a close-up, but unfortunately, Zhang Hai wasn't a star, and he wasn't very handsome. This made the audience on the sidelines somewhat disappointed. They originally thought that it would be a battle between stars, but now it seemed to be a one-man show by Bieber. Hey guys, it looks like there's a bullfight going on down there. I didn't expect there to be desserts to watch before the competition starts. Because the match had not started yet, the people in the broadcast booth upstairs were also fiddling with the wires. The 4 commentators of TNT were also chatting or playing with their phones. Kenny Smith, who was sitting in the corner, looked up when he heard some commotion below. As a result, he happened to see the bullfight that was going on the field. Me? Is there a bullfight? Hearing that there was a show to watch, Charles Buckley and O'Neill immediately ran over. The 2 behemoths instantly pushed Kenny Smith aside and leaned against the glass to watch. Looks like Justin Bieber is causing trouble again. On the other side, Uncle Emmy also walked over with a smile. He glanced at the arena below. It would be nice to be able to watch the show before the live broadcast. Hey Shaq, I don't think I've seen this person before. Is he a Huaxia celebrity? You always go to Huaxia. You should know him. Looking at Zhang Hai, who was doing a simple warm-up on the field, Charles Buckley tried hard to recall. He shouldn't know this guy. He couldn't help but look at Shaq O'Neal behind him and asked with some confusion. I don't think I know him either. Whatever, let's watch. By the way, Charles, guess who will win? Looking at the 2 people below, O'Neal shook his head. He really didn't know Zhang Hai. Of course, the number of Huaxia celebrities he knew was limited. Although Bieber is a naughty kid, I still think he will win. Shaking his head, Charles Buckley said with certainty. Seeing that Charles Buckley actually guessed Bieber, O'Neal was a little speechless. He immediately said to him, F***ck, why don't you guess the mysterious man? You know, you can tell from his skin color that he is from Asia. Maybe he is from Huaxia and knows martial arts. If he is from Japan, maybe he knows ninjutsu or something. Unfortunately, Charles Buckley was not stupid. He glanced at this guy and said to him, You think so highly of him. Guess he will win. Although Bieber is a naughty kid, I still think he will win. But after hearing Bakker's words, O'Neal shrugged and said regretfully. Then the 2 of them laughed cheekily. However, even though the 2 of them laughed very cheekily, it also proved that Justin Bieber, as a basketball enthusiast, was indeed not bad. At least on the street court, he was a half-thigh existence. Otherwise, they would not have guessed that he was the one. But no matter what these people thought, Zhang Hai, who was on the court at this time, had also finished warming up. After casually throwing his jacket to Moses Adams, he stood on the court and looked at Justin Bieber, who was still dribbling and showing off his skills. He said, How do you play? It's very simple. Don't you know the most basic bullfighting? One person attacks, one person defends. Continue to attack if you score. If you don't score or go out of bounds, trade the right to serve. Whoever scores 7 points first wins. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Justin Bieber also said quickly. Then let's start. Zhang Hai said and walked to the free throw line. Seeing Zhang Hai's action, Justin Bieber was stunned. Holding the basketball, Justin Bieber looked at Zhang Hai and said loudly, "Aren't you going to throw a three-pointer to decide who will attack first?" "No, you attack first. Otherwise, you won't even be able to touch the ball." Zhang Hai was still very confident in his own strength. After saying this lightly, he casually stood at the free throw line and waited for Justin Bieber to attack. Damn it. Seeing Zhang Hai deal with him so casually, Justin Bieber's eyes turned red. He cursed under his breath. After washing the ball, he slowly dribbled the ball toward the three-point line. This game will be over very quickly. Watching the game on the court, Olenek, who was off the court, said softly while drinking the viscous mustard-like drink to recover his strength. Olenek was also a player from Canada, but his relationship with Justin Bieber was not as good as that of Andrew Wiggins. After all, he was the top scorer. Yeah, although Justin Bieber is not a good person, his level is still not bad. This game will probably end very quickly. Hearing his voice, Mirotic, who was sitting next to him, also said with a smile, "No, you're mistaken. I mean, that guy will win." When he heard Mirotic's words, Olenek shook his head and pointed his finger at Zhang Hai, who was still on the field. He obviously still remembered the existence that their coach had called a monster. Ah! Hearing Olenek's confident words, Mirotic didn't know how to continue. He could only take it as Olenek said it casually. He raised his head and looked at the court. "I'm coming." At this time, Justin Bieber had also dribbled to the three-point line. After saying this to Zhang Hai, he suddenly accelerated and rushed to the left side of Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai didn't even bother to extend his hand. He took a step and blocked in front of him. All of this was actually within Justin Bieber's calculations. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He instantly changed direction and rushed to the right. But the moment he completed his move, Zhang Hai seemed to ignore gravity. He took another step to the right and appeared in front of him. Although he was blocked twice in a row, Justin Bieber was not discouraged. Instead, he moved along with his center of gravity and made a huge pulling motion. He turned to the left again, then took a step and was about to turn around again. But Zhang Hai's body appeared in front of him again at this time. Then, Justin Bieber jumped around like a giant grasshopper, but no matter how he jumped, he couldn't leave Zhang Hai's side. He was really being watched. Zhang Hai strolled around like he was taking a stroll, but every time he appeared, he would block Justin Bieber's path. Seeing this scene, the boos and cheers of the audience became louder and louder. The pressure on Zhang Hai was now all transferred to Justin Bieber. This made Bieber more and more anxious. Finally, when Zhang Hai blocked in front of him again, he was a little unhappy. He leaned directly against Zhang Hai and wanted to take a backward jump shot. "I don't believe that you can interfere with me when I make a move." When his body flew into the air, Justin Bieber's face also showed a special smile. But at this moment, a black shadow suddenly rose in front of him. The whole body directly blocked between him and the basket. So high. Seeing Zhang Hai's jump, not to mention the audience on the sidelines, even O'Neill and the others on the second floor were stunned. Who knew that such an unknown guy would have such strength? Looking at Zhang Hai's smiling face in the air, Justin Bieber was also stunned. He subconsciously pushed the basketball in his hand, but Zhang Hai directly smashed the basketball out of the sidelines like a volleyball. One attack is over. It's my turn. After landing again, Zhang Hai looked at Justin Bieber, who was a little scared out of his wits, and chuckled. With this level of skill, he still dares to play with me. This guy is really looking for death. Gulp, let's do it. Justin Bieber swallowed hard. Even if he lost, he didn't want to lose. He roared and said to Zhang Hai. Some nosy fans had already picked up the basketball that Zhang Hai had just slapped away. Zhang Hai also walked to the center circle and pushed the ball to Justin Bieber. This was a wash. Justin Bieber also slapped the ball back. But he didn't expect Zhang Hai to catch the ball and shoot. Yes, remember Zhang Hai's shooting range? It covered the entire half of the court. If he shot here, It was no different from shooting a two-pointer. As Zhang Hai's wrist shook, the basketball reflected Justin Bieber's surprised, puzzled, and confused eyes. It plunged into the opposite basket. The whole audience was silent for a moment. Chapter 165. It's coming. When he saw Zhang Hai making a move, Olenek held his face and said indifferently, "Don't worry." "It's coming? What's coming? Oh my God, what kind of trick is this?" Miritich, who was still a little confused at first, was still a little puzzled after hearing Olenek's words. However, when he saw Zhang Hai's shot go straight into the basket like a guided missile, he couldn't help but be shocked and almost bit his tongue. In fact, he wasn't the only one who almost bit his tongue. Originally, when these people saw Zhang Hai's defense just now, they were a little confused because they realized that Zhang Hai's speed, strength, jumping ability, and the most terrifying thing was his balance. All of these were extremely strong. It was as if he was playing, compressing Justin Bieber's space of movement to the extreme. And now, Zhang Hai's move made them extremely surprised. They didn't know how to describe it. Miritich opened his mouth wide in horror. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. After a long while he muttered softly, "This guy, he must have guessed it." "Guessed it? His shooting percentage is as high as 90% without any defense. I don't think it's possible to guess it. Moreover, he hasn't shown his most terrifying side yet." Olenek touched his face and said with lingering fear as he thought about the blow he suffered that day. He hasn't shown it yet?" Hearing his words, Miritich didn't know how to continue this time. "You're really lucky. Again." At this time, Justin Bieber on the court had also recovered from the shock just now. He swallowed hard, picked up the basketball that rolled back to his side, and threw it to Zhang Hai. After Zhang Hai received the ball, he naturally did it again. The same position, the same angle, and even the sound of the basket hitting the basket was the same. With another schwa sound, the basketball hit the basket again. Seeing this, the audience, who were already confused, became even more confused. After being stunned for about 10 seconds, the entire stadium exploded. Everyone was talking crazily about when the luck ball could become a regular weapon. People who were not very familiar with Zhang Hai were discussing him crazily. But unfortunately, Zhang Hai was not a star. Secondly, he had never been on TV. Thirdly, he was not a celebrity or a founder. Therefore, even if they searched the internet, they couldn't find any news about Zhang Hai. However, this didn't stop these people from admiring Zhang Hai. A person who can throw 3 points in the half court as if he was throwing 2 points. What a terrifying existence. I haven't said start yet. I haven't washed the ball. Why are you in such a hurry? Hearing the buzzing in his ears was like a fly's buzzing. Justin Bieber was at a loss. He looked at Zhang Hai with a serious face. "Then it doesn't count. It's up to you." He shrugged. It was just a ball. He didn't care. Who cares? Again, start. Seeing Zhang Hai's indifferent attitude, Justin Bieber was furious. He picked up the ball again and threw it to Zhang Hai. Then he yelled, "Start." Just before he yelled, he had already rushed toward Zhang Hai. He wanted to block Zhang Hai's shot. But to be honest, Zhang Hai didn't want to shoot now. Looking at Justin Bieber rushing over, Zhang Hai gently dribbled the basketball and then stepped with his right foot. In Justin Bieber's eyes, Zhang Hai almost instantly turned into a shadow. Like a storm, he directly blew past him. The loud sound even made his face hurt. By the time he reacted, Zhang Hai had already broken through him like he was taking a stroll. What a fast first step. As a former NBA player, Kenny Smith, who was known for his speed, was shocked when he saw Zhang Hai's first step. Zhang Hai's first step was even faster than Wade at his peak. From above, Zhang Hai was like a sharp knife. His body flashed, and he had already passed Justin Bieber. After a few dribbles, he had already rushed into the three-point line. When he entered the three-point line, Zhang Hai had already picked up the ball. 1 false step, 2 firm steps. The moment his right foot stepped on the free throw line, he flew straight up as if he had been catapulted. The audience sitting in the first row could clearly see that when he flew up, his head was almost above the height of the basket. He really flew high and far. He even had the leisure to step down and change hands in the air. Then, he grabbed the basketball with his right hand, raised it high, and smashed it heavily into the basket. When he came down from the basket, The audience in the stadium felt as if they had been punched in the chest. It took a few seconds for them to react, and then they burst into a roar that shook the sky. Good physical fitness. Jumping from the free throw line with one foot and changing hands with the tomahawk? Ahem, Zach Lavin. Are we reliable tomorrow? Looking at Zhang Hai's attack, the fans on the sidelines were more surprised and cheered wildly. The NBA players off the court were a little dumbfounded. The laymen were there for the excitement, while the experts were there for the skill. They could see that there was a monster living in Zhang Hai's body, which did not look very strong. Even LeBron James, who was known as the #1 monster in the NBA, did not have such a hard strength when he was at his peak. Especially Audiobook and Zach Lavin, who were going to participate in the dunk contest tomorrow. After the two of them looked at each other, Audiobook carefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said to Zach Lavin. Zach Lavin curled his lips. He did not know what to say. He had no problem jumping from the free throw line for a dunk. He even looked better than Zhang Hai when he switched hands with the tomahawk. However, when these two things were combined, the difficulty was not as simple as 1 + 1. After moving his neck a little, Zhang Hai smiled as he took the ball and walked in front of Justin Bieber, who was already in a daze. He stuffed the basketball into his arms and smiled as he gestured to. 2 balls, continue. Okay. Seeing that Zhang Hai did not intend to let him go, Justin Bieber licked his lips and said stiffly. Then he washed the ball again, but this time, he was a little confused because he did not know if he should rush again. However, even if he did not rush, it did not mean that Zhang Hai would let him go. Without saying anything, he started again. This time he was not only fast, but also continuously fast. The speed at which he dribbled the ball was even faster than the King of Hell, Devin Harris, at his peak. He rushed straight towards Justin Bieber. Looking at Zhang Hai, who was constantly enlarging in his pupils, Justin Bieber was really frightened. He really thought that Zhang Hai was going to hit him. Just as Zhang Hai's speed was getting faster and faster, and he was about to lie on the ground to avoid it, Zhang Hai's body stopped less than 5 centimeters in front of him. The inertia and gravity seemed to have no effect on Zhang Hai's body at all. Looking at Justin Bieber's sweat dripping down because of fear, Zhang Hai's mouth revealed a devilish smile. Who asked this guy to find trouble with me for no reason? I'll teach him a lesson and let him know how to behave in the future. The moment that smile was deeply imprinted in Justin Bieber's mind, Zhang Hai's body started again. It was a faster speed than before, and he flashed into the inside line in an instant. Before the reasonable collision zone, Zhang Hai's body soared into the air. At the moment of takeoff, after 2 consecutive turns, a double straight-line slam dunk once again caused an uproar in the entire stadium. Wow, what is this? What is this? Don't tell me this guy is unorthodox. I feel that my face is red and swollen. Seeing Zhang Hai score the ball again, Charles Buckley on the other side had already roared loudly. His knees are as hard as steel. That kind of sudden stop and sudden move. I feel numb just thinking about it. As a former representative of the speed players, Kenny Smith shuddered and said with some lingering fear. That kind of sudden stop was really terrifying. If the person in front of him at this time was not Justin Bieber, who had long given up, but a defensive player, that move could even break the defensive player's leg. Of course, if the other side did not follow but used their eyes to guard, then it was a different story. Compared to his sudden stop and sudden move, the subsequent 720-degree slam dunk did not seem so important. This monster, how do you know him? Looking at Zhang Hai, who had picked up the basketball again, Mirotich's eyes could not leave Zhang Hai. Although Zhang Hai only scored 3 shots, the things that those 3 shots showed were really important. Chapter 166. I have a stomachache. I'll go to the bathroom first. Wait for me when I come back. You must wait for me. Looking at the basketball that Zhang Hai handed over, Justin Bieber was a million times unwilling to take it. However, it was not his style to admit defeat. Therefore, he rolled his eyes and decided to escape by taking a dump. He did not give Zhang Hai time to react at all. He had already slapped away Zhang Hai's hand and ran away quickly. Although the booing along the way was deafening, he only had one thought at this time, and that was to get out of here quickly. He could not stand it anymore. Shoo! Looking at him running away, the audience in the audience erupted. Almost everyone was giving him the middle finger. Some of the people close to him were cursing, But this didn't slow him down. Instead, he sped up. Hey! He's really shameless. Looking at Bieber's fleeing appearance, Zhang Hai chuckled and slowly walked back to his position. As for the basketball in his hand, he threw it behind him. The basketball was the same as the previous 2 long-range shots. As if it had a guidance system, it went straight into the basket. Wow, YM. Seeing Zhang Hai shoot the ball again, the audience did not have the leisure to care about Justin Bieber at this time. Instead, they shouted loudly. The so-called YM was the abbreviation of Yellow Man. Zhang Hai was not a celebrity. Secondly, he did not have an encyclopedia. Naturally, these people did not know what Zhang Hai was called. They could only use Zhang Hai's skin as an abbreviation to call him. This was not a race. In fact, it was just like in the United States, it did not matter to call a black person black. Zhang Hai had been here for a long time, so he did not care. He just smiled and waved to the crowd. Then, he sat down in front of Moses Adams again. Seeing that Zhang Hai was not going to play again, the audience here was very dissatisfied. However, they were dissatisfied that Zhang Hai was not going to play. Anyway, he did not rely on these people to make money. Wow, boss, you are really strong. Have you ever thought about playing in the NBA? How about I be your manager? Moses Adams said excitedly in Zhang Hai's ear when he heard the cheers. Come on, don't you know what kind of meat the cattle in my manor are? Do I need to go to the NBA? Rolling his eyes, Zhang Hai said with a chuckle. Moses Adams also smiled when he heard Zhang Hai's words. Indeed, he knew how much potential Zhang Hai's manor had. Otherwise, he would not have stayed by Zhang Hai's side and flattered him so much. This guy now raises 20,000 cows. According to the calculation that a cow can be sold for $50,000, that is $1 billion. If it is sold for $100,000, that is $2 billion. This is just a year's amount. The most powerful player in the NBA, LeBron James, has played for more than 10 years and has not earned $2 billion. There were a lot of stars performing on the stage this night, but almost none of them were famous enough to be called by Zhang Hai. The one who performed the most was Ariana Grande. She was a new generation of female singers in the United States, but Zhang Hai did not know her. There was also Christina Aguilera. She was a mentor of the Voice of America, but Zhang Hai did not know her either. Generally speaking, when he watched the All-Star game at home, Zhang Hai would change the channel when it was time to sing. This was because he was not very interested in singing, especially English songs. He did not understand them before. Now he understood, but he did not have the habit of listening to these things. Now that he heard it live, it was not bad. Just as Zhang Hai was watching the girls singing and dancing on stage, Moses Adams went out and came back. Boss, are you interested in attending the banquet after the All-Star game? Moses Adams asked in a low voice as he looked at Zhang Hai. Banquet? What do you mean? When he heard Moses Adams' words, Zhang Hai also withdrew his gaze. It means what it means on the surface. Shrugging his shoulders, Moses Adams explained to Zhang Hai that the NBA All-Star Game was not only watched by ordinary people. There were also some social elites and celebrities. After the All-Star Game ended, the NBA would hold a banquet every year. These people who were voted to become All-Stars would attend. It felt like they were selling their clothes. In fact, the league wanted to use these players as a bridge to get to know some of the celebrities or rich people who like basketball, so as to obtain investment and support. Of course, with the NBA's slow promotion, they were now not short of money. The banquet was now more of a banquet to show off their status. It was a place for the rich to exchange what they needed. Of course, it was also a place that girls who wanted to become famous looked forward to. Chapter 167. The All-Star Game ended in an uproar. In the end, Russell Westbrook, the backup point guard of the Western Conference, became the MVP of the year with a score of 41 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 3 steals. The 41 points was also the second highest score in the history of the All-Star Game, second only to Zhang the Great's 42 points. However, this was still very scary. When Russell Westbrook raised the trophy that symbolized the MVP of the NBA All-Star Game, the New York All-Star Game officially came to an end. For some ordinary people, they could go back to sleep now. But for the celebrities who participated in the All-Star Game, there was a special banquet that they had to attend. Of course, it was not clear whether it was a banquet or a banquet because the people who could attend were all rich and powerful. Even the players were willing to interact with the rich to see if there was a chance to make money. Zhang Hai also had a chance to attend this banquet. Of course, this was inseparable from Moses Adams's connections. In addition to his connections, Zhang Hai also needed to show his strength. He needed to donate $1 million to the NBA's charity. This could be considered a stepping stone. The $1 million could be used as a tax deduction. The tax deduction rate was 1-to-1, so Zhang Hai did not care much about donating $1 million. After all, he had to pay the $1 million in April. Now that he had a chance to attend the banquet, it was a good choice. After paying the $1 million, Zhang Hai stepped into the venue of the NBA banquet. However, after entering, Zhang Hai regretted it. The people who attended the banquet, even if they were black, were all dressed in suits. He was the only one who was dressed in outdoor attire. It was indeed a little awkward and degrading. Zhang Hai felt that the waiters here were dressed more formally than him. Most importantly, although it was called a banquet, it was actually a buffet banquet. Most of the people were holding a glass of wine and chatting, just like what he saw on TV. There was nothing to eat at the cold restaurant. Isn't it a little degrading for me to wear this? Zhang Hai whispered as he looked at Moses Adams next to him. Boss, I told you a long time ago, but you don't like to wear it. Boss, it's up to you. Haha, I'll go over there first. I have a few clients to meet. Moses Adams patted Zhang Hai's shoulder and said with a smile. In fact, even if they wanted to buy a suit now, it was too late. After all, the All-Star Game started at 8 o'clock in the evening. The All-Star Game lasted nearly 3 hours. It would be 11 o'clock by the time they arrived at the banquet. In the 24-hour shop, there were obviously no suits that could be used to attend a banquet of this level. Therefore, instead of buying some random brands, it was better to let Zhang Hai wear this. It was more unique and eye-catching. Chapter 168. Where are we going? Hearing Selena's words, Zhang Hai was stunned again. He didn't want to come here in vain, but the problem was that he really didn't know these people. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena smiled. She suddenly felt that this Zhang Hai was really an interesting person. She didn't say anything, but instead, she pulled Zhang Hai's arm and walked to a corner in the distance. When Zhang Hai came over, he saw a woman sitting on a sofa in the corner. This woman looked to be in her 30s. She was a very pure Caucasian woman. Her well-maintained skin was extremely tight at this time. A pair of lively eyes looked around casually, but she gave people a feeling that she was like an iceberg that couldn't be approached. It could be said that this woman had the strongest aura and was the coldest beauty that Zhang Hai had ever seen. She was wearing a light blue dress, which made her seem a little out of place in this lively banquet hall. After all, the women who came to the banquet, if they didn't wear black and white, they would wear some warm colors such as yellow, red, beige, pink, and so on to show their friendly image. However, this woman did the opposite. She wore an ice blue dress. Although it was also a formal dress, it had the same effect as Zhang Hai. The most direct effect of this effect was that when she sat there, no one dared to pass within 3 meters of her. Of course, it could also be because this queen-type beauty's aura was too strong. Sister Pulla, you're here. However, Selena acted as if she didn't see such a strong aura. After walking over with a smile, she arranged for Zhang Hai to sit on the sofa opposite the woman. Then, she came to the woman's side and leaned on the woman's arm with a smile. She grinned and said to the woman, "Oh, it's Selena. I recently saw the news about you. Are you okay?" Hearing the girl's words, the woman named Pulla looked at her with a smile. Although she was smiling at this time, Zhang Hai felt that even if she was smiling, she looked very cold. "It's nothing. I'm already used to that rotten person. It's just that those reporters surrounding me all day long are a bit troublesome. Oh right, let me introduce you. This is Zhang Hai, the guy who helped me vent my anger. Before the rookie challenge, he taught that rotten person a lesson. His family has a manor that specializes in raising cows, fish, and the like. I remember that sister recently took over Sam's club, so I came over to introduce you to see if there's any opportunity to cooperate." Hearing this woman's words, Selena shook her head. She didn't want to be stuck in the mire of Justin Bieber again. She came here with a goal. "Oh." Hearing Selena's words, the woman named Pulla raised her head in surprise and looked at Zhang Hai. "Mr. Zhang is Asian?" Looking at Zhang Hai's face, which is still very young here, Prawalton asked him. Oh, I'm Xueqi. Although I have a green card in the United States, I didn't become a citizen, so I'm still a Xueqi citizen. Hearing her words, there was nothing to hide, so Zhang Hai said directly to her. Oh, is that so? Then may I know where Mr. Zhang's manor is located? How much stock does it have? And how is the quality? Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton shook the glass in front of her and said slowly. In fact, in her heart, she really has no interest in Zhang Hai's manor, but she has a good personal relationship with Selena. Although the United States emphasizes that one thing is another, if she directly refuses without even asking, it will hurt their relationship. My manor is in Boston. To be exact, it should be in Winthrop. I have a total of about 20,000 cows now. As for the quality, I don't know much about it, but what I usually eat is the top grade A frost snowflake beef. It's all produced by my manor, and it has a decent output. After thinking about it, Zhang Hai described his manor. He had no impression of Sam's Club at all. He didn't even know what this guy was. Just like this woman was perfunctory with him, he was also perfunctory with this woman, but he still chose to tell the truth. This Selena helped to introduce him, so he couldn't ignore her face. In Zhang Hai's view, his beef is the one he doesn't have to worry about. Special grade A frost snowflake beef? It seems that Mr. Zhang's quality of life is still very good. There are no more than 5 people here who can eat this kind of beef without limit. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the woman chuckled. In her opinion, Zhang Hai was talking nonsense. No matter how rich a person is, it's impossible to eat special grade A frost snowflake beef for every meal. The retail price of this thing is between $350 and $400 per pound. Even the cheapest price is $350, 1 pound per meal. 3 meals a day is 3 pounds, which adds up to $1,050, and this is just the cost of the beef. 365 days a year is nearly $400,000. $400,000 is not a lot. They don't lack this money. But this is only for one person. If it's for a family, 2 people will be $800,000, 3 people will be $2 million, and 10 people will be $4 million. This doesn't include other money. With this kind of steak, seasonings and the like also need to be specially made. In addition, even Bill Gates may not be willing to eat this kind of beef every day. Now it seems that if Zhang Hai is telling the truth, then he is a spendthrift, but the chances of him bragging are higher. Don't believe me? Look, you're smiling like that. I know you don't believe me. I'm telling the truth. I don't have to worry about the sales of my beef, because I'm going to participate in the beef show here in April this year. Every cow I slaughter can produce special grade A beef. As long as I get the Beef King, I think the sales of my beef will be no problem. You see, you don't believe me again. How about this, if you really don't believe me, come to my place when you have time, and I'll show you. Seeing this woman's gaze, for an otaku like Zhang Hai, what he couldn't stand the most was others looking down on him. Well, his poor self-esteem was constantly being worshipped, so he didn't hold back and directly said to this woman. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the woman was startled by his confident tone. In fact, the most important thing was that she was startled by his words. Every cow can be slaughtered to produce special grade A beef? What the hell is this? Okay, I want to take a look. Hearing Zhang Hai's confident words, the woman looked at him with some interest. She didn't know why Zhang Hai said this. Was it simply to lure her to his manor? Or was he really that confident? Looking at Zhang Hai's appearance, the woman's sixth sense told her that this man is not lying. If what he said is true, then she will definitely not let go of this fat piece of meat. I can't do it recently. The day after tomorrow is the new year of our Xueqi. I have to go home for the new year. I will probably be back at the end of February. How about this, if you really want to take a look, you can go after that time. I welcome you at any time. Hearing that this woman wanted to see for herself, Zhang Hai didn't say much and directly agreed. After the two exchanged phone numbers, Zhang Hai also got up and left. When he left, Selena also followed. She now found this guy to be really interesting. After staying in the United States for so long, she actually doesn't know me. It's fine if she doesn't know me, but as a manor owner, she doesn't even seem to know Prawalton. This guy is really funny. Hey, your strategy just now is not bad. Let Sister Pulla go to your place to take a look. If she really likes it, the sales of your 20,000 cows will not be a problem. This can be considered as a small help from me. You don't have to thank me. After the two left Perwalton, Selena Gomez also patted Jiang Hai's shoulder and said to him with a smile, "Strategy, my ass. I'm telling the truth. I don't dare to say anything else, but I have enough premium grade A beef. Eat as much as you want." When Jiang Hai heard Selena's words, he couldn't help but look at her. This little girl is still too naive. I'm obviously telling the truth. Really? Seeing Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena was also stunned. Although she wasn't in this business, at least she knew what premium grade A beef was. At present, the world's beef was almost cut off by the United States. Except for some countries like Xueqi, which didn't import American beef, most of the country's markets were occupied by American beef. However, in this world of American beef, there was a unique existence. It stood proudly at the peak of the beef world, and that was Japan's Wagyu beef. Why was Wagyu so expensive? Some people said that it was because they drank red wine, had professional massages, and so on. But in the end, it was because they could make more delicious premium grade of frost beef. It could be seen how important this kind of beef was in people's hearts. Even if she was a big star, she would not have many opportunities to eat this kind of beef. Now that Jiang Hai said she could eat as much as she wanted, it really made her curious. Okay, then I'll go with Sister Pulla. You have to treat me well. This is my private phone number. Here, someone is calling me. I'll go first. Looking at Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena showed her signature smile. She took out a business card from a hidden place in her skirt and stuffed it into Jiang Hai's hand. At this time, a few girls were greeting her in the distance. She also quickly said something to Jiang Hai and ran over. Looking at the business card in his hand, Jiang Hai was a little speechless and scratched his head. You gave me a business card just like that? Well, I'll keep it. After all, it was also a star's business card. When he returned to China, he could show it off in front of his buddies. However, according to his understanding of his buddies, they wouldn't recognize it even if he took it out. Compared to a star's business card, they were more interested in the NBA. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but touch his chin. Should he ask for an autograph? Chapter 169. Phew! As the plane descended from the sky, Jiang Hai yawned and staggered out of Bing City's airport. However, as soon as he stepped out of the gate, a gust of cold wind blew past him, instantly dispelling his sleepiness. I'm finally back, Jiang Hai said with a smile as he stretched his back and looked at the foggy sky. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he couldn't help but cough twice. The air in Boston was far worse than Texas and Montana. Even so, in Jiang Hai's opinion, the air in Boston was quite good. At least, it was much better than New York, Los Angeles, and other cities. However, compared to China, New York was actually better. Of course, this was mainly referring to the first-tier cities. In recent years, with the development of the first-tier cities in China, at least in terms of air quality, it was indeed difficult for people to accept. Ever since the All-Star competition, Jiang Hai had attended a banquet that night. For him, all he got was 2 women's phone numbers before he left because he was full. The next afternoon, he boarded a plane from New York back to China. From the US to China, there were only 3 major cities: the imperial capital, Shanghai, and Eastern Guangdong. Eastern Guangdong was an additional route. Only Luo City was used. The routes between the imperial capital and Shanghai were slightly more. This time, Jiang Hai was flying to the imperial capital. After 13.5 hours of flight, Jiang Hai knew what time it was when he boarded the plane and when he got off. It was 3:50 p.m. when he boarded the plane and 6:20 p.m. when he got off. At that time, he didn't directly transfer to Bing City. After all, there was still a day's time. He bought a plane from American Express for the next day and flew back to Bing City. Here, Jiang Hai once again felt the greatness of Yunyong. After all, this was the Huaxia period of the year. Oh no, it was the period of the largest migration of people in the world. It was indeed amazing that he could buy a plane ticket at this time. Jiang Hai flew back to Bing City at around 4 p.m. on February 17, 2015. Thinking that tomorrow was New Year's Eve, Jiang Hai felt a lot of emotions. It was better to spend New Year's Eve at home, even if there was no one at home. Jiang Hai, over here. Just as Zhang Hai was lamenting the loneliness of life, a voice suddenly came from afar. Zhang Hai fixed his eyes and found that the person who greeted him was none other than two of his friends, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua. These two people were his junior high school classmates, and their relationship was quite good. When Zhang Hai came back last time, he ate a lot with these two people. Moreover, Fu Yuan kept saying that he wanted to go to Zhang Hai's manor to play. He had even signed the contract. Although it was a little cold to go now, he was still prepared to spend the new year at home and then go to the United States with Zhang Hai for a few days. That was the United States. He had only heard of it before, but he had never seen it before. Hey, I'm here. Hearing their voices, Zhang Hai also tightened his backpack and walked over. You're finally back. Let's go. Get in the car. Seeing Zhang Hai coming over, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua also greeted him immediately. They originally wanted to help Zhang Hai carry his things, but after looking at Zhang Hai, they found that Zhang Hai had nothing but a backpack. The two of them were not used to it. Come, I brought something for you. Sitting in Fu Yuan's car, Zhang Hai opened his backpack with a smile and took out a few autographed photos from it. In this backpack, there were a total of 2 sets of clothes, which were the 2 sets that Zhang Hai carried from home. In addition, there were only some autographed photos. These autographed photos were all from the star players at the NBA banquet. These star players were still very kind to Zhang Hai. They didn't mind if he asked for autographed photos as long as he prepared a pen and photos. So, Zhang Hai got a lot of autographed photos. Why did you bring anything else? Your beef is very good. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Fu Yuan also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but give him the middle finger. Damn, of course it's very good. Those are special A-grade frost snow beef. 1 pound, which is 9 taels, costs more than 2,000 yuan. How much? Are you crazy? More than 2,000 yuan for a piece of beef? What's wrong with the beef? Can you become an immortal after eating it? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was shocked, and Xiang Hua was even more shocked. What kind of game is this? A piece of beef is more than 2,000 yuan. What a scam. This is just the cost price. If it was in a Western restaurant, it would at least be doubled. Looking at the appearance of these two people, Zhang Hai said proudly. In fact, when he first heard about this thing, he was not much better than these two people, but recently he has been used to it. Damn, are you kidding me? Do you know that I ate a piece? Are you going to scam me? I tell you, I don't have the money. If you want my life, I won't give you. While driving, Fu Yuan looked at Zhang Hai in the rearview mirror and said, Scam you? I was going to bring this back for you to taste. Let's see tomorrow. We will get together in the morning and then divide the beef. By the way, don't you like Wade? This is his autographed photo for you. Xiang Hua, who do you like? By the way, if you don't like basketball, then I won't give it to you. Hearing Fu Yuan's voice trembling a little, Zhang Hai patted his back seat hard, then smiled and picked out a photo and gave it to Fu Yuan. Fu Yuan liked to play basketball when he was in school, but after stepping into society, he had no love for basketball. This was just the opposite of Zhang Hai. In the 3rd round, his opponent played normally, so he went home. It seems that he really didn't have a scandal with anyone, so after thinking about it, Fu Yuan pointed to another person next to him. That is Xiang Hua, who has a crush on her. Boss, I'm married. But Xiang Hua's answer was more straightforward, looking at him contemptuously. Well, I have a crush on her. Are you a brother? Do you want to go with me? Hearing Xiang Hua's words, Fu Yuan helplessly opened his mouth, but finally shook his head and admitted it. Looking at this guy's appearance, Zhang Hai couldn't help but laugh in the back row. Although Zhang Hai really didn't want to go to this place, his brother had already spoken. It was just a meal, so it didn't matter. I despise you to death, let's go. He patted Fu Yuan's back again. Zhang Hai also leaned against the back row and opened his hand. Although he didn't know what the scene would be later, he needed to conserve his energy first. Flying was really tiring. Seeing that Zhang Hai finally agreed, Fu Yuan's old face also smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum. If Zhang Hai really didn't want to go, then he really could only send Zhang Hai home. However, he always felt that Zhang Hai, this local tyrant, was not by his side. He always felt a little uncertain in his heart. But fortunately, Jiang Hai still agreed because of their brotherhood. This was good news. Taking advantage of the fact that Jiang Hai didn't have time to regret, he also sped up the car and rushed to the place where they agreed to meet. Not long after, they had already stopped in front of a 4-star hotel. This was the place for the appointment. Chapter 170. Hey, you guys are finally here. We're just waiting for you. Hurry up. It's room 306 on the 3rd floor. I think it's about time for them to leave. After parking the car, the three of them walked into the lobby of the hotel. As soon as they walked in, they saw a woman with a big belly coming over with a smile. This person is none other than Jiang Hai's class monitor. This class reunion was also organized by her. Usually, Jiang Hai has no contact with her, but Fu Yuan and Xianghua have a close relationship with her. They often go to her house to play mahjong. Although she is a mahjong enthusiast, her strength is very poor. Her character is the same as a man's. She is very forthright. Now that she is pregnant and has a big belly, she still comes out to play. Everyone is here? Hearing the class monitor's words, Fu Yuan suddenly became interested and asked excitedly. Almost everyone is here. After calculating the number of people in her mind, the class monitor also said with a smile. That is you Jia here too? Hearing the class monitor's words, Fu Yuan asked the class monitor in a low voice. She's here. Let's go up. Seeing Fu Yuan's sullen look, the class monitor also said to him with a chuckle. Okay. As soon as he heard that this person was also here, Fu Yuan was like a wild dog that was out of its reins and was about to rush upstairs. But before he could run, he was stopped by Jiang Hai. Wait, the campus bell you are talking about, don't tell me you are referring to Yu Jia. Looking at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai couldn't believe what he was seeing. Of course, who else do you think it is? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan said with a righteous face. Looking at his righteous appearance, Jiang Hai really had nothing to say. I knew you had a strong taste, but I didn't expect it to be so strong. Well, let's go up. Seeing Fu Yuan's eagerness to try, Jiang Hai chuckled. It seems that people's aesthetic standards really can't be easily changed. The Yu Jia from Fu Yuan's mouth was also a weirdo when Jiang Hai and the others were in school. Girls develop early. This is inevitable. This Yu Jia not only develops early, but her figure is not small. Jiang Hai remembered that the last time he saw her should be in the 4th year of junior high school. At that time, she was already more than 1.8 meters tall and weighed more than 170 kilograms. When Jiang Hai and the others were in school, they provoked the gangsters outside. Those gangsters sent people to the school to block them. That fight was earth-shattering. Jiang Hai, Xianghua, and Fu Yuan fought until their clothes were torn. Of course, the other party was not having a good time, but they were lying down several times, and no one came to help. It was not that they were not popular, but those students were more afraid. At that time, Yu Jia just passed by. Xianghua said with a smile when he heard Jiang Hai's words. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curl his lips. Well, at first, he thought that there was no big boss, but now it seems that he hasn't arrived yet. I say, do you have nothing better to do? Forget it. I'll sleep for a while. If he doesn't come by 7 o'clock, let's go out to eat. I want to eat double-fried pork. With a sigh, Jiang Hai said helplessly. Okay, I'll go and tell Fu Yuan. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xianghua also said with a smile. At the same time, almost the same conversation as Jiang Hai just now happened in the bathroom. But the person who asked the question became the study commissary, and the person who spoke was Feng Yunchen. Don't tell me you like Jiang Hai. Looking at Feng Yunchen, who was washing her hands in the mirror, the study commissary said with some worry. Yeah, I like him. Looking at her friend's face in the mirror, Feng Yunchen also said with a smile. Are you crazy? So many people are chasing you and you choose him? Let's not talk about Boss Lu. Let's talk about who you like. Why do you like a cattle farmer? Tian Chou has been chasing you for so many years. Whether it is wealth, property, knowledge or appearance, I don't see how Jiang Hai is better than him. Shrugging, the study commissary recalled the appearance of Jiang Hai. A man who came to the reunion without wearing formal clothes. She didn't like it, she didn't like it, she didn't like it very much. Lu Zhongri and I are just playing around. He can't give me anything except money. As for the Tian Cho, hee, if you like it, I'll give it to you. Feng Yunchen said with a smile after glancing at her friend behind her. It looks like tiger skin, but everyone knows that it's bullshit. Even if it's really tiger skin, he wouldn't dare to wear it. But the most eye-catching thing is that there are 2 pheasant feathers on the front of his coat. It's really gaudy. Hey, Uriel. Happy Chinese New Year. As soon as this guy walked in, his body floated forward for a distance, and then he landed. He showed his white teeth and said loudly to the 3 tables in front of him. Hey, why are you only here now? We're still waiting for you to start eating. But your English skills have improved. That's right, that's right. If Director Tian isn't here, we won't be in the mood to eat. Come. Director Tian, sit here. There's an empty seat here. After hearing his voice, everyone in the room fell silent for 3 seconds. Most of the boys burst out with a strange enthusiasm. Their gazes were really fervent. One by one, they ran in front of this guy, wanting to pull him to sit with them. This person also smiled and chatted with these people. As for the other girls who were still gossiping, most of them tidied up their clothes and showed their best side. One by one, they sat there and secretly flirted with this guy. Out of the nearly 30 people in the hall, only Zhang Hai, Fu Yuan, and a few other men didn't move. The rest of the people were like flies that saw feces. They suddenly surrounded them. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai's eyebrows twitched. He originally thought that this melodramatic scene wouldn't happen, but now it seemed that he was overthinking it. F***CK, what the hell? You don't know him? Well, it seems that your zodiac sign is a goldfish. Your memory only has 7 seconds. This guy is Tian Cho. You guys even fought when you were in junior high. Seeing that Zhang Hai didn't seem to remember who this person was, Feng Yunchen smiled and introduced him. Tian Cho, Tian Datu? Well, it seems that his head is getting bigger and bigger. Nodding, when Tian Cho's name was mentioned, Zhang Hai understood. This guy really didn't get along with Zhang Hai in school. This guy's studies were in the middle of the class. He was slightly better than Zhang Hai. He liked to play basketball and was also tall. His father was originally the deputy director of a police station, so his family had some money and some power. In junior high school, which student didn't go to the internet cafe to play? He met Zhang Hai in the internet cafe. They were all classmates. Because he was bored, he played a game of Counter-Strike. He was defeated 42-1 by Zhang Hai. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and directly turned off Zhang Hai's computer. Then he fought with Zhang Hai. Although this guy was tall and strong, his fighting level was really bad. After being beaten up by Zhang Hai, he went to find the teacher. In order to please his father, the teacher reprimanded Zhang Hai and also found his parents. Zhang Hai went home and was taught a lesson by his father. However, in school, this guy didn't interact with Zhang Hai from then on. This was because Zhang Hai's father beat him up because he went to the internet cafe, not because of a fight in school. The education policy in the Northeast was slightly different from other places. When Zhang Hai was young, he didn't do well in his studies, did well in exams, went to the game hall, internet cafe, and had puppy love. These things were bound to be beaten. However, if he got into trouble, such as smashing glass, fighting, or breaking something in school, nothing would happen. He would compensate for what he should do. At most, when he went home, he would say a few words. He wouldn't even be scolded. Especially fighting. When Zhang Hai was young, he fought a lot. Every time he beat someone up, the other person's parents would bring their child to complain. His father and mother always had a bad attitude in front of others. They would turn their heads and not do anything. They would even buy delicious food for him. However, if you were beaten outside, more than 70% of the parents wouldn't stand up for you. Instead, they would be scolded. According to Zhang Hai's understanding of the people around him, more than 90% of the families were educated like this. Of course, there was no shortage of families with elite education, or they were especially spoiled in the family. But generally, such children would either admit defeat or be stubborn, and they would be bullied all the time. Obviously, Tian Cho belonged to the series of admitting defeat. Looking at him like this, it really reminds me of a poem. Going to the banquet alone as a chicken feather, It's all classmates who pretend to be chicken feather. Looking at Tian Cho, who was fluttering in the wind, Jiang Hai touched his chin and said softly. Hearing his words, Feng Yunqin next to him couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 173. Where's my Yunqin? Yunqin, you're here. Come, follow me to that table. Our good friends are all there. Obviously, Tian Cho didn't hear Jiang Hai's poem. Otherwise, who knew if he would still be so cocky? The reason why he would be a sucker this time was firstly to show off in front of his old classmates. Secondly, it was for Feng Yunqin. Tian Cho's aesthetic point of view was originally the same as Fu Yuan's in the eyes of Jiang Hai and the others. They all liked the kind. Hee. Since junior high school, Tian Cho had liked Feng Yunqin. At first, everyone thought it was because of Feng Yunqin's good grades. But it wasn't until now that everyone understood why he had known for a long time that Feng Yunqin was not bad looking. It was just that the glasses, the old-fashioned outfit, and the braces that ruined this beauty. It was just like the song. The braces are beautiful, but the sister has such strong legs. After arriving at university, Tian Cho had been working hard to pursue Feng Yunqin. However, Feng Yunqin would rather be someone else's mistress than be with him. This was the most annoying thing for him. The most important thing was that he couldn't afford to offend the man beside Feng Yunqin. Although his family was considered a small official family, he would not be short of money. However, compared to the big entrepreneurs, he was still far from it. Presumably, this was also the reason why Feng Yunqin did not like him. In addition, Feng Yunqin had been developing in the imperial capital in recent years. He didn't have much chance to eat swan meat. However, he felt that today was an opportunity. Feng Yunqin had nowhere to go during the new year. The old man was still at home in the imperial capital. This was the time when the beauty was lonely. It was the time for him to perform well and win her over in one fell swoop. It was precisely because of this that he decided to hold this class reunion and was willing to be a sucker. As for Jiang Hai beside Feng Yunqin, well, he had temporarily forgotten who this guy was. Originally, he thought that as long as he called, Feng Yunqin would definitely run over. However, when Feng Yunqin opened her mouth, he knew that he was thinking too much. I won't go. I'm not very familiar with them. I'll stay here and have a good chat with my old desk mate. You can go over there and greet the others. Don't worry about me. Ugh. Originally, he thought of many answers from Feng Yunqin, but he didn't expect her to say this. For a moment, he was also a little stunned. Then, he looked at Jiang Hai. Although he felt that Feng Yunqin didn't come over, he was only using Jiang Hai as a shield. But this didn't prevent him from hating Jiang Hai. AI Director Tian, come. Let's sit over there and come back later. At this time, the study committee member surnamed Sun also walked over from a distance with her long legs. She said to Tian Cho with a smile. Then, she brought him to the first table. That table was the main table. Although Tian Cho was a little reluctant, he couldn't lose his temper at this time. He could only walk over with an awkward smile and sit in front of this table. However, his eyes kept glancing at Feng Yunqin from time to time. No matter how Tian Cho's mood was, now that everyone was here, it was naturally time to start the banquet. With the orders of those who were more experienced, 3 tables of the same banquet were brought over by the waiters. At this time, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua had also finished chatting with others. They were in a small group with Jiang Hai, so naturally, they had to sit together. Looking at the full banquet in front of them, many people secretly exclaimed in their hearts that they had made a profit this time. This 4-star hotel was also considered an old name in Bing City. Naturally, many people had come over to eat. Seeing the things on the banquet, those who were flattering became energetic. Director Tian, is this a lobster? It's so big. It shouldn't be cheap. Pointing at the lobster in the middle of the round table, a person at Tian Cho's table exclaimed loudly. The 3 tables of dishes prepared by Tian Cho this time were indeed not cheap. The main dish was that huge lobster. Other dishes were also a lot of seafood, such as vermicelli, garlic shrimp, oysters, cold jellyfish, scallion braised sea cucumber, steamed sturgeon. In addition to these dishes, there were many home-cooked dishes, such as celery cashews, sirloin beef tenderloin, braised pork knuckle, cold tiger dish, braised meatballs, boiled baby cabbage, fried eggplant, and 2 platters. One platter was mi cha shu, and the other was a cold combination of beef, chicken gizzards, and sausages. Excluding rice, there were a total of 16 dishes. A table of 10 people eating 16 dishes. Naturally, they couldn't finish it. The other dishes were okay, but the lobster looked really scary. It seemed that except for the whiskers, it was about 60 centimeters in size. It was indeed a very expensive thing in China. Of course, these 3 lobsters were all specially reserved by the hotel. They are all 2 feet long, and they are all Boston lobsters from Maine in the United States. This thing is very valuable there. In our place, 1 lobster costs 4,888 renminbi. Hearing this person deliberately point out the value of these lobsters, Tian Cho gave him a thumbs up in his heart and then said proudly. Hearing him say this, the people at his table naturally worked hard to flatter him, and they ate even more happily. However, when it came to Zhang Hai's table, Fu Yuan glanced at the lobster in front of him and said while eating, "TSK, is this thing very expensive?" "It's okay, this is indeed Boston lobster, but the price also depends on the time. For such a long lobster, if the supermarket has a special price, it is estimated to sell for about $50, which is more than 300 renminbi. But when you come to my place, you can eat as much as you want. I have a lot of them in the sea." Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Zhang Hai said casually. Compared to lobsters, he really likes to eat them, but in China, he can't afford them. "Hey, Tian Datu is really a Datu. 4,888 renminbi. Why don't you blackmail him? The price of 1 lobster. You can buy 16 lobsters locally." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Xiang Hua on the other side also laughed. But ridiculing is just ridiculing. This thing is really good in China, so he also got a big pincer and ate it. Compared to lobsters and other seafood, Zhang Hai is actually more fond of other meat dishes. Before going to Boston, Zhang Hai really liked to eat seafood, but in the past 6 months, he ate all kinds of fish and all kinds of steaks almost every day. In addition, the Americans really have no talent in cooking. Beef is either fried or stewed, and the stewed beef is basically the inferior beef. But in Zhang Hai's manner, there is only good beef, so it can only be fried. Seafood is similar. It is either fried, roasted, or seafood soup. Although he is not tired of eating, it is still very tempting to try the authentic Hua Xia food. Although the beef here was far inferior to the beef in his hometown, it was still authentic Chinese food. Zhang Hai hasn't eaten this smell for a long time. Although he is sleepy now, he is really hungry after being stirred by this smell. Seeing that Zhang Hai doesn't eat seafood, nor does he eat beef, but he specifically picks vegetables to eat. Feng Yunchen, who was sitting next to Zhang Hai, couldn't help but laugh. "It seems that you really eat these things all day over there. You are not even interested in seafood." Cough, hee hee, these things have shells or something. I'm too lazy to do it. Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, Zhang Hai was embarrassed to say these things. He has a lot of them. Isn't this a bit of showing off his wealth? After thinking about it, he found a reason. "Then I'll help you do it. You don't know. In our line of work, we can't eat much every day. We are hungry every day. Now that we can't enjoy it with our mouths, let me smell more." But who knew that after Zhang Hai finished speaking, Feng Yunchen also took advantage of the situation. She smiled and talked to Zhang Hai. As she spoke, she really picked up 2 garlic prawns from the plate and put them on her plate. After removing the prawns' heads, legs and shells, she put them on Zhang Hai's plate. When she put the prawns on Zhang Hai's plate, the people at the whole table were stunned. In an instant, Zhang Hai became the focus of everyone again. Originally, the boys were very happy to be able to sit with Feng Yunchen, but they didn't expect that now they suddenly had a feeling of being abused. As for Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua, they looked at Zhang Hai with a smirk and winked. "I'll treat you." Touching his hair, Zhang Hai said with a chuckle. "No need to be so troublesome. It's expensive here, and I can't eat well. I'm easy to raise. Haha, let's go to your house and buy 2 bags of instant noodles on the way." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen said with a smile. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai was also shocked. "It seems that this progress is a bit fast. You want to go home with me so soon? Of course, do you still want to be in love with me for a few years?" Feng Yunchen rolled her eyes at Zhang Hai. Feng Yunchen's words were already very clear. Zhang Hai was now pretending to be confused. At the moment, she was no longer polite. She walked directly to Zhang Hai's side, took Zhang Hai's arm in his pocket, and then strode forward with Zhang Hai. Seeing this scene, the men who were originally very interested in Feng Yunchen tonight were really heartbroken, especially Tian Chou, who was surrounded by a group of women. Watching Zhang Hai and Feng Yunchen leave, his heart was bleeding. But as Zhang Hai said, this guy was really scared. He didn't dare to face Zhang Hai head-on. Moreover, even if he wanted to find trouble with Zhang Hai, he couldn't do it because these classmates knew that Zhang Hai was now in the United States. Even if he wanted to make things difficult for Zhang Hai, he couldn't find a chance, so he could only watch with his eyes and his heart bleeding. Soon, a taxi turned from a distance. Feng Yunchen pulled Zhang Hai into the back seat. Looking at the taillights of the taxi speeding away, Tian Chou opened his mouth but found that he could hardly make a sound. However, while Tian Chou couldn't make a sound, someone made a sound. Looking in the direction where Zhang Hai and Feng Yunchen left, the class monitor, who was walking behind the crowd, took out her cell phone from her bag. Looking at the unfamiliar number on it, she hesitated for a moment and dialed it. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Qi Group in the capital. "President, are you really not going back this year?" The assistant wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses looked at Qi Li, who was standing in the office and looking at the world outside, and said to her carefully. At this time, in this huge building, only the lights in Qi Li's office were still on. The lights in the other departments, except for the door guards, had been turned off. Although Qi Li was usually cold, she was still very good to the employees in her company. She never owed them salary, and the monthly bonus would only be more and not less. During the New Year's holidays, there was almost no overtime in the unit. Even if there was overtime, the overtime pay given was the best in the industry. Every day, the company provided 2 meals, 1 lunch, and 1 dinner. The taste was quite good, and there was no charge. All of these were paid for by her. It could be said that the Qi Group was very popular in the country. Chapter 175. Clang. With a sound, Zhang Hai's body unconsciously fell on the sofa, and the person who pushed him down was no one else but Feng Yunchen, who came back with him. But at this time, Feng Yunchen's face was a little red, and her originally beautiful face was also unusually coquettish at this time. Feng Yunchen's face was a little red, and her originally beautiful face was also unusually coquettish at this time. When they were in the restaurant, Feng Yunchen said that she wanted to go to Zhang Hai's house to eat. Since Zhang Hai did not refuse, it was impossible for him to go back to eat instant noodles like Feng Yunchen said. After Zhang Hai's taxi arrived downstairs, he found that the small restaurant near his home was still open, so he packed some food to go back to eat. As for Feng Yunchen, she went out for a walk when Zhang Hai went to buy food. When she came back, she was already carrying a beer and 2 bottles of red wine in her hand. Although it was not a good thing, since she bought it, Zhang Hai would just drink it. However, he only drank half of it, and Feng Yunchen had already made her move. She deliberately sat next to Zhang Hai. While drinking, she pulled her coat. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai was stunned again. He wanted to stand up, but Feng Yunchen stood up first and pushed him heavily onto the sofa. Then she slowly pulled up her clothes. "Cough, you also finished eating. Otherwise, I will take you home first." Looking at Feng Yunchen in front of him, Zhang Hai didn't know where to put his eyes. He coughed and tried to stop it. How is it, Zhang Hai? Are you excited?" However, looking at Zhang Hai's innocent look, Feng Yunchen's clothes were almost taken off. Feng Yunchen had a figure that was very impressive for a northeastern girl. She was extremely tall, 1.72 meters tall. In addition to her occupation, her figure was very good. Originally, it was not visible under the thick winter clothes. Now, as she took off her sweater and trousers, her white and delicate skin and proud curves were displayed in front of Zhang Hai. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, she did not answer, but deliberately leaned down. For Asians, the existence of a pair of king weapons constantly attacked Zhang Hai's visual nerves. Cough, 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 cough. This is not very good. Don't you have a boyfriend? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai's eyes evaded her gaze even more. With a red face, he whispered, "Sai, my boyfriend, let's not talk about it. When he was young, he was crazy in that aspect. He was already not good in that aspect, but he still wanted me to be his mistress. Other than money, he couldn't give me anything. In fact, I also understand that when he looked for me, it was nothing more than for me to support him when he went out, but I was destined to be unpresentable, wasn't I? Just like now during the new year, he will still choose to go home, and I will always be the person who is lonely outside. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen gently bit her lips. Zhang Hai felt that she was speaking the truth. Then, she sat down on Zhang Hai's lap. That proud existence was almost in front of Zhang Hai. The pink lace clothes made that existence looming and extremely tempting. Feeling the triple influence of sight, touch and smell, Zhang Hai kept swallowing his saliva. Why are you talking about him at this time? Are you not tempted by me at all? Tilting her head, Feng Yunchen whispered in Zhang Hai's ear. This is more like it. After all, I can't even give you money. Swallowing another mouthful of saliva, Zhang Hai whispered. I don't need your money. Let's not talk about this. How is my body? A little impulsive. As she spoke, Feng Yunchen leaned over. That pair of eyes that were like autumn waves kept glancing at Zhang Hai. This kind of words. Looking at the temptation in front of him, Zhang Hai didn't know what to say. Hey, you don't have to say it. You have already told me here. Seeing that Zhang Hai was still hesitating, Feng Yunchen had already slid down Zhang Hai's body. She gently stopped at the place where she needed to stop. She had already felt Zhang Hai's intentions. She didn't give Zhang Hai a chance to resist at all. She had already completely taken off Zhang Hai's pants. Seeing Zhang Hai's reaction, Feng Yunchen's face was very red. She didn't know if it was because she drank too much or because she was shy. I'm turning off the lights. Looking at Zhang Hai's completely stiff body, Feng Yunchen whispered while blowing in Zhang Hai's ear. After she finished speaking, she deliberately used her tongue to lick Zhang Hai's ear. Before Zhang Hai could react, she had already stood up, quickly turned off the lights in the living room, and then walked back to Zhang Hai's side. As her body leaned down, three indescribable things came to mind. An hour later, when the sound of the bed hitting the wall finally disappeared, Zhang Hai hugged Feng Yunchen's body and looked at the ceiling of his house weakly. There was some hesitation in his eyes. Someone said that men were actually the most hesitant, tangled, and contradictory creatures in the world. When they were asking for seeds, they were like dogs. After masturbating, they despised people for being ugly. Men always didn't like to think rationally at some critical moments. As the saying goes, you were a pervert before, and after that, you were a saint. Now, Zhang Hai also had this feeling. In the beginning, something happened between him, Maggie, and that unknown girl, but perhaps because the two of them weren't familiar with each other, Zhang Hai didn't feel any guilt in his heart. Instead, he quickly forgot about the two of them. But Feng Yunchen was different. She was his classmate. Moreover, taking a step back and seriously calculating it, regardless of whether she was the original wife or little alkali, she was someone who was taken. Even if Zhang Hai's physical fitness was good, after falling asleep, 6 hours of sleep was obviously not enough for him to get up on his own. Besides, today was New Year's Eve. It was a bit too early. This is called morning chew. I learned it from a sister. I haven't used it yet. You are the first one. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen also raised her head and smiled sweetly at Zhang Hai. So I'm honored? Patting his forehead, Zhang Hai said with a chuckle. Of course you don't move. Enjoy it. Patting Zhang Hai's thigh, Feng Yunchen also lay down this time. Ding 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 ding. Just as Zhang Hai was feeling the morning service that he had never felt before, the doorbell of his house rang quickly. Listening to the harsh doorbell, Zhang Hai was shocked, and Feng Yunchen was also shocked. Who is it? Scratching his head, Zhang Hai hasn't been home for several months. Who is it? Coming up and ringing the doorbell like this during the new year? Signaling Feng Yunchen not to worry, Zhang Hai stood up first. After putting on his sweater and pants, he opened the door. When Zhang Hai opened the door, a pretty face came into Zhang Hai's eyes. Their eyes met, and time stopped at this moment. My mom called me several times. Feng Yunchen smiled and stuck out her tongue. Then she didn't mind Zhang Hai's gaze and changed her clothes in the room. It was late last night. Although there were lights, Zhang Hai still didn't see Feng Yunchen's figure clearly. Now that he saw it, Jiang Hai couldn't help but give a thumbs up in his heart. Feng Yunchen's figure was really great. She had a height of 1.72 meters, long curly hair, and exquisite facial features that had already been introduced, which formed the most eye-catching face. Her figure was even better. Perhaps it was because she had been training all year round, but there were some faint lines of muscle on her body. However, it didn't look very manly. Instead, it added a kind of heroic spirit. Her extremely long legs, coupled with her charming buttocks, a waist without a trace of fat, and an E-grade upper body, were all sharp weapons that attracted the attention of men. My figure is not so easy to build. Although my face has been injected, this figure is trained bit by bit. It's pretty good. Feeling Jiang Hai's burning gaze, Feng Yunchen said heartily. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. He couldn't help but withdraw his gaze and quickly put on his clothes. However, it would take a lot of time for a woman to clean up. After Jiang Hai put on his clothes, she still spent more than 10 minutes to put on her clothes. This was still under the condition that she didn't put on makeup. When Jiang Hai and Feng Yunchen went downstairs, it was already 20 minutes later. Just downstairs, Jiang Hai saw a Bentley Mulsanne parked in the distance. Jiang Hai was very familiar with this car. It was Feng Yunchen's car. When they got married, this car was used as the wedding car. However, Jiang Hai didn't rush forward. Instead, he went to the roadside first. After helping Feng Yunchen get a taxi, he came to the back of the car and gently knocked on the window. "Get in the car." The window slowly rolled down, revealing Qi Li's iceberg-like pretty face. She said coldly to Jiang Hai, "Forget about getting in the car. If you have something to say, just say it. I have to see my parents." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai rejected Qi Li's words and said with a serious face. To be honest, Jiang Hai really didn't want to have anything to do with this woman. "I'll go with you. If you are a man, get in the car. Don't be so wishy-washy." Hearing that Jiang Hai rejected her words again, Qi Li's eyes were wide, and she said with a heroic face. Feeling Qi Li's aura, Jiang Hai's mouth twitched disdainfully. "You didn't go when my mother was gone. Why are you talking about going now? If there is nothing else, I will leave." Jiang Hai shook his head. Although he didn't care about other women, at least he wouldn't be so tough. But he really couldn't be soft-hearted to Qi Li. "I want to talk to you about our marriage. Get in the car." Seeing that Jiang Hai finished speaking and turned to leave, Qi Li was also a little anxious. She immediately opened the car door and said loudly to Jiang Hai. Hearing that she finally got to the main topic, Jiang Hai's footsteps paused. Then he nodded and walked to the other side of the car and sat in the back seat. When Qi Li saw Jiang Hai get in the car, although she was a little unhappy, she also sat back. "Master, please cremate her." After the car door was closed, Jiang Hai patted the driver sitting in the driver's seat and said to him. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, the driver looked at Qi Li's assistant in the passenger's seat. He couldn't make the decision. Listen to him. "Let's go." At this time, Qi Li, who was sitting steadily, also said to the person in front. After hearing Qi Li's words, the car slowly started and drove to the crematorium. "If you have something to say, just say it." The car sped slowly on the road, and the atmosphere in the car was a little awkward. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai decided to start the conversation. After all, he was a man, so he thought that he should start the conversation first. "This year, I hope that you can accompany me home." Hearing that Jiang Hai finally spoke, Qi Li also looked out of the window and said coldly. She really didn't know how to face Jiang Hai now, so she could only look outside. "President Qi, I think you may be disappointed. We are divorced, aren't we?" Glancing at Qi Li sitting next to him, Jiang Hai scratched his head, thought for a moment, and said to Qi Li. "As long as my signature is not on that paper, then we are not divorced. You are my legal husband. Even if you go all over the world, you can't change that." Hearing Jiang Hai mention the divorce agreement, Qi Li's words were cold. "Oh, do you think I still don't understand the law? How long have we been married? How long have we been separated? Did anything happen between us? I think you know as well as I do. The reason why I applied for a divorce and gave you an agreement is to save your face. Let's part on good terms." "Well, we didn't get together at all, so it's better to part on good terms. If you make up your mind not to sign, Then I will go to the court to apply for a divorce. I don't think it will be very troublesome. Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai's eyes narrowed. When he needed help the most, he was not threatened by others, let alone now. Yes, you can apply for a divorce at any time, but don't forget that after the divorce is confirmed, you will give me half of your property in Boston. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qi Li's voice seemed to ease a little, and she said slowly, My money, why should I give it to you? Does it have anything to do with you? If I give you the things in Boston, you should also give me half of your money. Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai frowned and said loudly, Winthrop's manor is Zhang Hai's lifeblood, and now no one knows the value of the manor better than he does. Not to mention anything else, the cow alone is worth more than $1 billion. Even if he was beaten to death, he would not be willing to give half of the money to Qi Li. Oh, you still say you understand the law? Are you sure? Your manor in Boston was bought by you when our marriage was still going on, which is our common property. My shares were inherited from my father, and my father died before we got married. When I inherited the property, it was also before we got married. That is to say, my money is premarital property, and your manor is postmarital property. No matter where you go to sue, as long as we don't divorce by agreement, half of your manor is mine. Maybe she was stimulated by Zhang Hai's words. Qi Li also turned over with red eyes, staring at Zhang Hai and explaining the law to him word by word. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai licked his lips. He didn't know whether Qi Li was telling the truth or not, but he vaguely felt that she didn't deceive him. Even if he didn't get half, even if he got 1/10, Zhang Hai would still feel distressed. Looking at Zhang Hai's speechless look, Qi Li felt refreshed for no reason. She felt that since she learned that Zhang Hai ran away a few months ago, she was always angry when facing Zhang Hai. Now that she had won back one round, her heart was really relaxed for no reason. Looking at Zhang Hai's speechless look, she smiled. Chapter 177. Do you understand now? Whether we divorce or not, it's up to me, not you. Gently knocking on the handle of the car, Qi Li's originally ice-cold face showed a smile, and then she said softly to Zhang Hai, Then you're not going to sign it? Lowering his head, Zhang Hai didn't know what to say now. If he really had to give up half of the manor to divorce, then he could grit his teeth and sign it. If he didn't sign it now, then he would be in trouble. No, I can sign it. I'm not interested in your manor in Boston, but I have a request. Seeing that Zhang Hai seemed to have made up his mind, Qi Li smiled. She had a firm grasp of Zhang Hai's mentality. Although the two were the same age, in terms of social experience and negotiation skills, Zhang Hai was dozens of streets behind Qi Li. From the beginning, she knew that Zhang Hai wanted to take the initiative. In this case, she needed to be heavy-handed. Sure enough, with a few words, she suppressed Zhang Hai's original anger. At this time, with Zhang Hai's stubborn temper, it was estimated that the fish would die and the net would break. Qi Li came to find Zhang Hai, first, not to break her own net, and second, not to catch a dead fish. After testing Zhang Hai's bottom line, she wanted to give Zhang Hai hope, a sweet date. Sure enough, when Qi Li's voice fell, Zhang Hai's eyes were once again filled with hope as he looked at her. I want you to go to my house for the new year tonight. After the new year, I will consider signing it. Looking at Zhang Hai's eyes, Qi Li's heart was filled with loneliness and helplessness. She really didn't want to play such tricks on the person who was nominally the closest to her. But it seemed that if she didn't play these tricks, she and Zhang Hai would have to completely break off contact with each other. Whether it was because of her mother or because of other reasons, she couldn't break off with Zhang Hai now. Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai looked at her doubtfully. Are you serious? Of course, although I, Qi Li, am not a man, when have I not taken my word seriously? Seeing Zhang Hai's hopeful eyes, Qi Li nodded seriously, but her eyes were always a little evasive. Okay, I'll believe you. However, Zhang Hai didn't notice her gaze, but patted his leg. As long as he could completely get rid of this woman's shadow, he didn't mind going again. Anyway, it was just a social event. Okay, then let's go burn paper first. Seeing that Zhang Hai agreed, Qi Li also nodded and sat in her seat without saying anything. Zhang Hai was still in a state of excitement. He was finally going to get a divorce. Well, other people were very excited when they got married, but Jiang Hai was obviously different from the ordinary, other people. The car drove very fast, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the crematorium. Jiang Hai deliberately stopped the car first, bought a lot of paper money and blood, and went to his parents' place. This has nothing to do with whether it's cheap or expensive. Wearing a suit at my house is a form of respect for my mother. Moreover, is Archaeopteryx really expensive? With your current net worth, you still have the nerve to say this? Other than your watch that's not bad, I don't see what's good about it. She pointed at the watch on Jiang Hai's wrist. Okay, this watch did help Jiang Hai gain a lot of attention. Yo, an expert. Do you want me to treat you to my homemade shredded fried noodles? Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai smiled. I'm not in the mood to chat with you. Change. Rolling her eyes at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said unhappily. Then I'll go back and change into sportswear. I only brought 3 sets of clothes. When he heard Qi Li say that his clothes were not good, Jiang Hai grinned. He hated wearing suits the most. It had nothing to do with whether it was cheap or expensive. His coat, the one made of mountain lion skin, cost more than $6,000, which was equivalent to more than $40,000. Although it was not comparable to top brands such as Burberry, it was still better than the average luxury brand. After all, it was worth a lot of money. You win. Let's go and buy it directly. Looking at Jiang Hai's nonchalant expression, Qi Li took a deep breath. This Jiang Hai was really shameless. But she had no choice. She could only tell the driver in front that today, not only her and her mother, but also her second uncle and his family. So, Jiang Hai couldn't go today. Even if he wanted to go, he couldn't embarrass her. To her, spending tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands to buy a suit for Jiang Hai was not a big deal. Although Jiang Hai might not be willing to spend so much money, the driver was very familiar with Bing City's roads. In Bing City, there were 2 places that sold luxury goods. One was Mikhail, and the other was Zhuozhan. This time, they went straight to the latter. After they arrived, Jiang Hai became a model and walked around with Qi Li. Originally, Qi Li didn't know much about Jiang Hai's body. After all, she had never seen Jiang Hai's body before. But today, she found out that Jiang Hai's body was really good. She wondered if he had always been like this or had changed recently. After walking around for more than an hour, when both of them came out, Jiang Hai had changed into a new suit. As Jiang Hai would rather die than wear a suit, Qi Li chose a Versace suit for him. It was a knitted sweater inside and a sweater outside. It looked very casual, but Jiang Hai felt that it was quite tight. His belt, pants, and even shoes were changed. As Jiang Hai would rather die than wear leather shoes, he felt that wearing leather shoes was too uncomfortable. In the end, he changed into a pair of casual shoes. But he did not let Jiang Hai wear his hiking shoes. Can we go now? Jiang Hai loosened his collar. He felt uncomfortable wearing this kind of slim-fit suit. Qi Li looked at Jiang Hai casually. She was still not satisfied with what Jiang Hai was wearing. As the saying goes, clothes make the man. But Jiang Hai had been wearing casual clothes for too long, and he had a wild aura. Compared to those successful people, he was already out of place. Luckily, he was not wearing a suit. If not, he would feel even more uncomfortable. Not now. We still need to buy some New Year's gifts for my mother, like food and necessities. I don't know about necessities. But if it's food, follow me. Thinking for a moment, since he wanted to give a gift, the best thing to eat was naturally the beef from Jiang Hai's manor. He had sent a lot of it to Bingqing. Now, he only needed to go to Fu Yuan's house to get it. Although she was curious why Jiang Hai didn't need to eat, Qi Li didn't directly refuse this time. She vaguely guessed that Jiang Hai probably wanted to give her the beef from his manor. Even if the beef wasn't very good, her mother would still be very happy. Then the 2 of them got in the car again and went to Zhongbei Fu Yuan's house. When they knocked on the door of Fu Yuan's house, Fu Yuan had just woken up. When he saw Jiang Hai, he started to talk nonsense. Oh brother, you are still awake? Did that little vixen? Cough, sister-in-law is also here. When he saw Qi Li walking in with Jiang Hai, the smile on his face froze. All right, stop talking nonsense. Where's the beef? I want to send some to Qi Li's mother. Seeing Fu Yuan's awkward expression, Jiang Hai smiled and said to him, Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan immediately brought Jiang Hai to his fridge. Although the best way to keep this kind of beef was to be cold, if the conditions did not allow, it could be frozen. Although it would lose some of its texture, it would still taste good. Jiang Hai was very confident in his beef. He casually chose 2 pieces of Tianjin beef and left. After leaving Fu Yuan's house, both of them got into the car and headed to their destination. Chapter 178. Ding Dong. Along with the ringing of the doorbell, a series of hurried footsteps could be heard from the villa. As the door opened, a young girl dressed in maid attire poked her head out. When she saw the 2 people outside the door, her eyes couldn't help but widen, her face full of disbelief. "What's wrong, Xueqi? Don't you recognize me?" Looking at the girl's surprised look, Qili, who was outside the door, revealed a rare smile and said to the girl inside the door. Hearing Qili's words, the girl suddenly shouted, "Miss, son-in-law, come in." "Madam, Miss and son-in-law are back." After hurriedly letting Jiang Hai and Qili into the house, she ran into the house and shouted loudly. Hearing the girl's shout, Jiang Hai also chuckled. For this Xueqi, Jiang Hai had seen her several times. Speaking of this child, she was also a pitiful person. She was 4 years younger than Jiang Hai and was 23 years old this year. Her father was also an old employee of Qili's father's company. His surname was Zheng. When he just started the company, it was not stable. So all year round, they worked hard in the capital. It was not easy for them to come back during the new year, so they must take the child out to play. When Xueqi was 12 years old, her family went out to play. As a result, they had an accident on the highway. Her parents died on the spot. Although she did not suffer any injuries, she was still scared. Since then, there were some problems with her brain. Because Qili's father pitied the child, he took her back home and raised her with his younger daughter. They had always treated her as their own daughter, but Xueqi did not think so. She always thought that she owed Qili's family a lot of things, so after she turned 19, she stopped going to school because she knew that she wouldn't be able to learn anything. Instead of wasting the family's money, she might as well focus on being a servant at home and fight to do all the chores. Although she didn't do well at first, her personality was extremely stubborn. Qili's family had told her many times, and they didn't want her to work, but she was determined to do so. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. Everyone in the family had gotten used to the way she dressed. However, if anyone dared to treat her as a real servant, that person would be in trouble. Because to Qili and the others, Xueqi would always be their third sister. Jiang Hai had seen Xiao Moth several times, but not when he was a child, but when he grew up. After all, he was going to marry Qili, so he must have come here many times. He also approved of Xiao Moth from the bottom of his heart. Under the guidance of the other servants, Jiang Hai first changed into slippers and then walked into the room with the meat. As soon as he walked in, he saw 4 people sitting in the living room. There were 2 men and 2 women, 2 old men and 2 young men. Just now, when your wife and son were shouting, why didn't they see you shouting? You had the upper hand. So why are you quarreling? Shame on you. Just as he was about to talk back, he was pulled by Qili, and Jiang Hai temporarily closed his mouth. Jiang Hai had seen this family a few times. The man was called Qi Yuanlong, Qili's second uncle, and also her father's biological brother. However, compared to Qili's father, this guy couldn't do anything and didn't leave anything behind. If he didn't have the company's shares and dividends every year, he might have starved to death if he was allowed to indulge in debauchery. The woman next to him was called Zhang Yu, a third-tier celebrity who was 10 years younger than him. She was raped 10 years ago and only became a full-time employee 6 years ago. The young man next to him was called Qi Zhangtao, Qi Yuanlong's son. He was 23 years old this year and was also a playboy who indulged in debauchery. His biggest wish was to inherit the company, and he was the kind of person who was more ambitious than the sky. When Qili's father was still alive, he had let him enter the company, but no matter what he did, he was muddle-headed. Later, in order to prevent him from destroying the company, he gave him some money to start a business, but the result was even worse. He lost money no matter what he did, and was extremely incompetent. However, he still insisted that he was quite good, and that he was just unlucky. If he increased the investment in him, he would definitely succeed. For such a person, Jiang Hai could only laugh. As for the woman next to Qi Zhangtao, her name was Lu Si, and she could be considered his fiancée. She was the daughter of the general manager of a subsidiary company of the Qi Group. She was a very good girl, beautiful and knowledgeable, but it seemed like a fresh flower inserted in cow dung. Come, come, come. Sit down. You haven't been here for a long time. In order to avoid the awkwardness, Qi Li's mother held Jiang Hai's hand and walked to the sofa with a smile. As she walked, she complained to Jiang Hai. That's right. It's not easy for your mother to stay here alone. Qi Li still has work to do in the capital, and you have nothing to do in Bing City. Why don't you come here every few days to visit? It's not right of you to do this. Hearing Qi Li's mother's words, Qi Yuanlong took a sip of the tea in front of him and said slowly to Jiang Hai. He had the demeanor of an elder. Mom, I haven't been in China recently. I went abroad and bought a manor. This is the meat of the cattle raised in my manor. I brought some over for you to try. Hearing this person's words, Jiang Hai didn't even pay attention to her. Instead, he continued to smile and said to Qi Li's mother. At the same time, he also handed over the beef in his hand. Oh, you don't want to live in the city and go to the countryside to raise cattle? Why raise cattle? Water buffaloes. What does this have to do with Changgu? If you insist on blaming the Yin family, then it's in Sun and in Zhongyong's business. What does this have to do with Changgu, who didn't take power at that time? Moreover, Changgu has been living a hard life these years. We all know about his relationship with Xiao Li. Is there anyone who cares more than him? Hearing Qi Li's mother's words, Qi Song's face changed and he started to talk nonsense seriously. Uncle, I'll call you uncle now, but don't take advantage of your seniority. Don't tell me that you don't know why my father suddenly had a heart attack. If it weren't for this guy, our family would still be reunited, and wouldn't be like this now. Hearing Qi Song's shameless words, Qi Li's face changed. She pointed at Qi Song and said seriously, Sister, you're wrong. Your father originally had a heart attack. Besides, the failure of the acquisition was just an accident. Besides, didn't you also benefit from it? Now the Lu family is still in power in your family. Now that Changgu has the intention to come and apologize, although that matter has nothing to do with him, it's also a matter of attitude. We should be lenient whenever possible. It's easy to make enemies. This time, Changgu also came here with a cooperation plan. We might as well listen to it. Hearing Qi Li's words, Lu Song was a little embarrassed. Taking advantage of your seniority. How could you say these words so casually? While Qi Song's expression turned ugly, another person behind him stood up and said with a smile, Don't worry. This person was called Qi Liang Kai, Qi Song's son. He was 35 years old this year. Like Qi Song, he was very ambitious. Originally, when Qi Li's father died, his family had the highest voice to take over the Qi family. After all, Qi Li was a woman, and she was not old at that time. Unexpectedly, Qi Li's mother was decisive enough. Qi Li was directly married off to Jiang Hai. A married woman was obviously more trustworthy than an unmarried one, especially when the person she was marrying did not have any influence. Just like that, Qi Song's family said goodbye to their original throne. This made them very uneasy and unhappy. After more than a year of hard work, Qi Li seemed to be more and more stable in the company. It was said that wealth moved people's hearts. In order to control the company's lifeline, it seemed that they would not hesitate to cooperate with their enemies. Hearing Qi Liangsai's words, Qi Li and her mother's faces became very ugly. They were not politicians, but even politicians had a bottom line. Now what did Qi Song mean? Cooperation. They were in a situation where they would not stop until one of them died. Who would cooperate with whom? Just when the mother and daughter were flushed because of anger and did not know what to say, a joking voice came from behind. Although the voice was not loud, it clearly entered everyone's ears. Hearing this voice, everyone looked back and naturally saw Jiang Hai sitting there at a glance. Hey, I always thought that my skin was thick enough, but I did not expect that there is someone in this world who is thicker than me. Qi Li, today I have learned something new. What do you mean, boy? Facing Qi Li, Qi Liang Kai might take care of a little, but facing Jiang Hai, who was a good-for-nothing in their eyes, they were not so polite. Did I not make it clear enough? You are really shameless enough to bully an orphan and a widow. You have the face to do that, right? Cooperation? Cooperation, my ass. In this world, there are two kinds of hatred that cannot be resolved. The hatred of killing one's father and the hatred of stealing one's wife. You keep talking so much nonsense, but you can't erase the principle that my father-in-law died because of him. This hatred, unless our family members are all dead, will never be resolved. With a disdainful smile, Zhang Hai said slowly and fearfully. What qualifications do you have to say such things here? Don't forget your identity. Seeing Zhang Hai's sarcastic remarks, Qi Song's face became ugly. With a straight face, he shouted angrily at Zhang Hai. Who am I? I am Qi Li's husband now. This is my family. And you, who are you, uncle? I'm sorry. We seem to have separated. Our family's business has nothing to do with you. Qi's shareholders? Then our family is like this. If you don't want to hold our family's shares anymore, how much is your shares worth? I will buy them at a premium of 20%. Do you want to do it or not? Hearing Qi Song's words, Qi Li and Qi Li's mother needed to give face to these guys, but Zhang Hai did not need to. His main business was in Boston. It was a manor, and he played with hard currency. He only had 20,000 cows, and he had no plans to export them to China. And even if he did, these people could not order him around. Zhang Hai was very unyielding now. With a trembling right hand, Qi Song pointed at Zhang Hai in disbelief. Was this something that the guy who married into the family dared to say? He still remembered that when they first got married, Zhang Hai was trembling in fear when he saw them. He absolutely did not dare to say a word. What was the situation now? He was going to rebel. Uncle Qi, don't be angry. Zhang Hai, right? Let me introduce myself. I am Zhangwu, Qi Li's boyfriend. You just said that there are two kinds of hatred in this world that cannot be resolved. Then, does that mean that the hatred between us cannot be resolved? Seeing Lu Song being humiliated by Zhang Hai, even his son Qi Liangkai did not know what to say. After all, Zhang Hai's words were very unreasonable. He did not care about feelings or feelings. He did not care if you were unhappy or not. Anyway, he was not like this. If you were unhappy, you could sell your shares to him and get lost. That was all. To be honest, Qi Li's mother didn't think that Zhang Hai could raise a good cow, but she accepted it as a gift from her child. However, the beef gave her a big surprise in the future. However, after Qi Li's mother left, there was a little awkwardness between Zhang Hai and Qi Li. Because the two didn't know what to say now, it seemed that they really didn't have anything in common. Phew, it's really a lot more spacious here. Can we watch TV? Zhang Hai sighed and said to Qi Li as he looked at the originally crowded living room that was filled with the smell of gunpowder. At this time, the living room had become a lot more deserted. Here. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qi Li also took the remote control of the TV and handed it to Zhang Hai. I usually watch 3D TV. Now that I'm suddenly watching a flat screen, I'm really not used to it. Is there anything good to watch in our country recently? After turning on the TV, Zhang Hai said while changing the channel. Find it yourself. Do you think I have time to watch TV? Qi Li said coldly as she rolled her eyes at Zhang Hai. Che! Looking at Qi Li casually flipping through magazines, Zhang Hai couldn't help but curl his lips and continue to look. Fortunately, he soon found a movie channel, which was now playing an old movie, Tang Bo Hu Diao Qiu Xiang. Since Zhang Hai had nothing to do, he sat there happily and watched it. By the way, is your manor in Boston? How big is it? How much did you spend to buy it? Looking at Zhang Hai's interest in watching TV, Qi Li also felt that it was really awkward to just sit here, so after thinking about it, she asked Zhang Hai. My manor is in Boston. Well, it can also be said that it's not in the city of Boston, but in the greater Boston area. Geographically, it should belong to Winthrop. The land area is 11,200 acres. Nearly 10,000 acres of land are grazing areas, and about 1,000 acres of land is a winery. The rest of the land is planted with trees. It's about 2 or 3 acres. It's a small forest. The sea area is 720 square kilometers. My manor cost me almost all my wealth, $280 million. Cough, why are you asking this? After hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai spoke while watching TV. He has always been very proud of his manor. Such a large piece of land is very valuable. But halfway through, he suddenly remembered that Qi Li seemed to be interested in his manor, so he immediately looked at her vigilantly. $280 million. And it's still in USD. If it's converted, it's 184 billion renminbi. You spent so much money to buy a manor, and only bought 10,000 acres. Are you crazy? But when she heard Zhang Hai's words, Qi Li had already shouted. In her opinion, if Zhang Hai was not crazy, then his brain must be flooded with water. Otherwise, who would buy such a manor? At this time, Qi Li's business instincts were almost subconsciously activated. She kept talking to Zhang Hai. I'll calculate it for you. Your 720 square kilometer fishery is worth 100 million at most. If you take out this 100 million, you'll still have $180 million. The manor has 11,200 acres, which means that the average price of an acre of land is $16,071. Have you checked the price of land in the United States? It's $300 to $400 per acre in Mexico. Even the most expensive land in California can only be sold for $3,000 to $4,000 per acre, not to mention Texas and Montana. With this $180 million, you can at least buy a farm of more than 100,000 acres, and that's only if you pick a place. You can buy a farm of 10,000 acres right now. Cough. Isn't that Boston? It's a metropolitan area. Although Zhang Hai had a rough idea in his heart that this price was a bit of a scam, he didn't know it back then, did he? He checked on the internet and found that land prices in the central and western parts of the United States were cheap, while those in the east were more expensive. The land prices in the Boston area were also very expensive because of the close proximity of the city. That was why he bought it. But after a long time, he learned that the manor did not seem to be calculated in this way. Later, Zhang Hai also secretly calculated that his sea was probably not worth $100 million. After all, there were still aquatic products in the sea for several years. So even if it was valued at $120 million, the land on the land was valued at 60 to 80 million at most. That was to say, the manor was worth 200 million at most. In the end, he spent 80 million more. It was a bit of a scam, but he had signed the contract. Both parties were willing, so he couldn't say anything. If they really got into a dispute, he was afraid that the background of his baby would be dug out. After all, some things couldn't be exposed. What's wrong with a metropolitan area? Don't other places have metropolitan areas? If you bought New York State for 280 million, I wouldn't say anything, but you bought Boston. Whether it's Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, or even Houston and Dallas, they are all more prosperous than this place. Hearing that Zhang Hai still dared to talk back, Qi Li raised her eyebrows and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai could only be quiet for the time being except for touching his head embarrassedly. After Qi Li finished speaking, she looked at Zhang Hai's appearance of going in one ear and out the other. She couldn't help but want to bite him. This guy is really annoying. But when she thought that she was dumped by this guy, she was even more unconvinced. The atmosphere between the two seemed to have returned to below the freezing point. Zhang Hai continued to watch TV, and Qi Li impatiently flipped through some magazines on the table. But fortunately, Qi Li's mother came back soon, and the family had a good lunch. However, our company still has a mole that cannot be eliminated, Qi Song's family. I still need your name to stabilize the situation. Looking at Zhang Hai, Qi Li said with a serious face. Only she knew how trustworthy her words were. However, these words were enough to deceive Zhang Hai, a person who didn't know how to do business or politics. I don't care about your company. I just came here today. Fine. Don't you want my manor? I'll give you half of my manor. I don't want it anymore. Stop the car, I'm here. Now Zhang Hai didn't want to listen to Qi Li's nonsense. He only knew that he was in a bad mood, so he patted the car door and said to Qi Li. Hearing Zhang Hai's slightly irritable words, Qi Li didn't refute anything. Instead, she directly stepped on the brakes and sat in the driver's seat. Zhang Hai also unfastened his seatbelt and got out of the car. Although there was a cold north wind outside, even so, he didn't want to stay by that woman's side anymore. Does this woman have any credibility? Is she playing with me? If it weren't for the fact that she was a woman, Jiang Hai would have already punched her. Spitting a mouthful of phlegm, Jiang Hai stepped on the crunching snow and walked slowly toward the road ahead. As for Qi Li, she sat in the driver's seat. Looking at the slowly walking Jiang Hai, whose shadow was elongated by the streetlights, Qi Li slowly leaned her forehead on the steering wheel. She didn't know why she said such a thing just now. In fact, she knew that it was better for her and Jiang Hai to sign the agreement. It was better for both of them. But she didn't know whether it was because of her pride or because she was unwilling in her heart. She couldn't make up her mind to sign her name. Especially after seeing Jiang Hai today. Originally, she always thought that the relationship between Jiang Hai and herself was just a misunderstanding. But when she saw Jiang Hai and Feng Yunchen at home this morning, her heart felt sad and sour. After spending a day with Jiang Hai, when she sent him home, the first thing he said was to sign her name. At that time, her heart even skipped a beat. She had been in love before. She knew the feeling of being in love. Now was not the feeling, and this was not the feeling of breaking up. She didn't know what this was, but every time Jiang Hai ignored her, it made her feel uncomfortable. She didn't know what kind of mood it was. Looking at Jiang Hai's back gradually moving further and further away until it disappeared, Qi Li continued to lean on the steering wheel. It wasn't until her mother called to ask that she reacted. She opened the window and let the cold wind blow on her face. Her originally empty eyes also recovered some consciousness. Qi Li turned the steering wheel and headed home. Chapter 181. Boss, I don't agree with what you are doing. Listening to the voice of Moses Adams over the phone, Jiang Hai lay on the bed weakly. When he got out of Qi Li's car, it was actually quite far from his home, about 10 kilometers away. Today was New Year's Eve, and there were no taxis on the streets at this time. If it was a good day, 10 kilometers was actually not very far for Jiang Hai. With his physical fitness, he could run there in more than an hour. But today was different. The ground of Ice City was very slippery, and it had been snowing for the past 2 days. It was difficult to walk on the ground, let alone run. He was embarrassed to call his friends. After all, they were also celebrating New Year's Eve at home. So Jiang Hai walked for more than 3 hours before he returned home. Fortunately, he could recognize the north and south. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go home. When he got home, even with his strong physical fitness, he was very tired. He took off his clothes and shoes and lay on the bed. But he still remembered what he had to do, which was to apply for a divorce. But as soon as he finished talking to Moses Adams directly voted against it. Why? I'd rather give her half of the manor. Although he was very reluctant in his heart, Jiang Hai was now determined. If he didn't make a decision, he would suffer. He now deeply understood the saying, if you don't make a decision, you will suffer. No, this has nothing to do with the manor. I know what you mean, but this has nothing to do with money. Do you still remember the girls in your manor? 8 employees, and 2 adopted girls. Hearing Jiang Hai's slightly angry words, Moses Adams said seriously. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai also calmed down. When you adopted these 2 girls, you approved it because you were married. And those girls, you could only hire them because you were married. If you divorce at this time, then I'll let them down. I'll find better jobs for them. As for Delina and Marion, there's nothing I can do. Hearing Moses Adams's hesitant words, Jiang Hai sighed. This marriage was like a sword hanging over his head. He was completely at a loss. Now, in order to get rid of this sword, even if he had to give up half of his fortune, he would do it. It's not just the problem of these girls staying. Because the time you adopted them is too short, it's easy to be labeled as fraud by those politicians. If you really divorce, the judicial department will intervene and investigate the source of your property. Because your nationality is still Huaxia, you don't have to worry about being put in prison, but you are likely to be sent back to China, and your property in the United States, that is, the manor, will be confiscated. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams made it clear. Of course, what he said was only the worst-case scenario, but who could guarantee what would happen in reality? While watching the Spring Festival gala that was no longer interesting, Zhang Hai's thoughts had drifted back to his manor. A few days ago, when he had something to do, he did not feel anything. Now that he was suddenly free, Zhang Hai really missed the people in his manor. Robins, Ai de Hua, Philemon, Delina, Marian. Unknowingly, so many people had gathered around him. These people had to rely on him to live. This feeling of being relied on was something that Zhang Hai had never experienced before. Because to be exact, since he was young, he had always relied on others to live. Now that he was suddenly relied on by others, the feeling of being needed by others really made him feel a little warm. Especially when he thought of his pets, Xiaobai, Goldie, Bucktooth, Chirp, Little Xia, and Big Dumb. He could not help but smile. He recalled how Xiaobai always surrounded him and waved its eyebrows mischievously, how Goldie looked cold and arrogant as it observed the surroundings, how Bucktooth was like a knight, often somersaulting on top of Xiaobai's head, how Chirp could not fly yet, it only knew how to run all over the place, how Little Xia had a special liking for carrots. Every time he fed it, it would lick his hand. There was also the fierce-looking Big Dumb. But this time, Big Dumb helped him vent his anger. I'll reward him with a drop of blood when I go back. Thinking of Big Dumb, Zhang Hai could not help but chuckle softly. He was really looking forward to it. If he gave this guy another drop of blood, would this guy turn into a great white shark? However, when he thought of blood, Zhang Hai could not help but think of the tattoo on his body. Since leaving the manor, the number of scales on his tattoo had become fewer and fewer. When he was in New York, there was only one scale. When he returned home, there was only an increase of half a scale every day. It seemed that the environmental factors between the two really played a big role. However, when he glanced at the scales that had already grown to the snake's buttocks, which were the scales on the snake's tail, he realized that there were about 100 more scales before he could reach the full scale. By the time he returned, it would be almost done by March. After looking forward to it for so long, his gold finger was finally going to be upgraded. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang. Just as Zhang Hai was still lost in thought, there was a sudden loud noise that shook even the glass from a distance. It also woke Zhang Hai up from his contemplation. When he looked up, he found that it was almost 12 o'clock. The sound of firecrackers reverberated around him, making him no longer in the mood to meditate. Neutralizing all the bad news with good news, my mood is a lot better. With a long sigh, Zhang Hai laughed at himself. As the 12 o'clock countdown ended on the TV, Zhang Hai's cell phone also rang.